Welcome back to Midnight Affair Tales. Thank you for joining us. John Carter's eyes fluttered open to the morning light, his mind still foggy from sleep. He reached out instinctively, expecting Lisa's warmth beside him. Cold sheets. A strange unease crawled over his skin. His pulse quickened as he sat up. Lisa wasn't just in the bathroom or downstairs making coffee. She was gone. He rose from the bed, his movements stiff, a dull ache forming in his chest. As he looked around the room, a sick feeling coiled in his stomach. Lisa's side of the closet? Empty. Her jewelry box? Gone. Their framed wedding photo? Missing. John's breath came faster now. Something was terribly wrong. He rushed downstairs, scanning the house for any sign of her. His wife, his partner, the woman he had built a life with. But the home felt eerily lifeless. Then he saw it. The laptop was open on the kitchen counter. The bank app still on the screen. John's hand trembled as he moved closer. Account balance, $0. The words hit him like a punch to the gut. His heart pounded as he flipped through his credit card statements. Maxed out. Every single one. His breathing turned ragged. The room spun around him as reality sank in. Then his phone buzzed. A single text message. From Lisa. I need to do this for myself. Don't try to find me. John's vision blurred. His hands clenched into fists. She had taken everything. A wave of nausea hit him, not from the money, but from the betrayal. Did she ever love him? Had it all been a lie? But then, through the heartbreak, something changed inside him. A cold, unfamiliar steel settled in his chest. She thought she had won. She had no idea what was coming next. John had always been a logical man. But logic had no place in what he was feeling now. Anger. Betrayal. An overwhelming urge to tear something apart. Lisa had planned this. She hadn't just left. She had executed a clean, calculated heist, draining his life savings without a second thought. But how long had she been planning it? And more importantly, where the hell was she now? John sat at his desk, staring at the glowing screen. He accessed their financial records, scrolling through transactions he hadn't noticed before. Small withdrawals at first, $500 here, $1,000 there. Then bigger amounts carefully spaced apart to avoid suspicion. And then last night, one final transfer of $250,000. His jaw tightened. His hands curled into fists. John clicked on their security camera app. He fast-forwarded through the footage from last night, then froze. There she was. At 4:07 a.m., Lisa walked out the front door, a duffel bag slung over her shoulder. She didn't hesitate. She didn't look back. A black sedan pulled up to the curb. Lisa slid into the passenger seat. John leaned in closer. The driver. A man. His breath caught in his throat. Lisa hadn't just robbed him. She had run away with someone else. His blood turned to ice. This wasn't just about money. This was war. 4 hours, John sat in the darkness of his home, replaying the footage over and over. Lisa had lied to his face for months. Had she ever really loved him? Or was it all just a game to her? He forced himself to focus. There was no time for self-pity. He called his bank. The answer made his stomach drop. The money was transferred to an offshore account. Untraceable. John ran a hand through his hair. He had two options. Call the police and file a report. Take matters into his own hands. He didn't hesitate. John picked up his phone and made a call. I need you to find someone for me. The man on the other end, his old friend and private investigator, Mark Hastings, paused before responding. Who? John's voice was ice cold. Lisa. Find her. And find out who the hell she ran away with. John had never been the type of man to crumble under pressure. Lisa might have thought she was untouchable, but she had underestimated him. He sat in his office, staring at the digital trail she had left behind. His private investigator, Mark Hastings, had already started digging. An hour later his phone rang. Got something, Mark said. She's in Miami. Staying at a high-end beachfront condo. John's grip on the phone tightened. She didn't just leave. She's living large, isn't she? Mark sighed. You're not gonna like this. She's not alone. John's pulse spiked. Who is he? Mark hesitated. A guy named Derek Mason. Young, good-looking, rich. Real estate investor. From what I can tell, she's been with him for a while. John closed his eyes, forcing himself to breathe. His wife had been sleeping with another man while spending his money? This wasn't just betrayal. This was a declaration of war. Find out everything you can about Derek, John ordered. I want to know his weaknesses. I want to know what makes him bleed. Lisa thought she had run away to a dream life. She had no idea her nightmare was just beginning. Mark worked fast. By the next day, John had a full report on Lisa's new lover, Derek Mason, a real estate investor. Young, wealthy, flashy. A man who thrived on risky deals and played fast and loose with money, women, and power. But John saw what Lisa didn't. Derek wasn't truly rich. His empire was built on debt, speculation, and illegal deals. He was one bad move away from collapse. And John? He was going to make sure that bad move happened. John sat at his desk, reviewing the financial records Mark had obtained. He smirked. This was going to be fun. Step 1. Tip off the IRS about Derek's undeclared offshore accounts. Step 2. Call in a few favors to put pressure on Derek's investors. Step 3. Introduce a fake business deal, luring Derek into an unwinnable trap. Within 24 hours, Derek's biggest investment deal would collapse. Within a week, the IRS would freeze his accounts. Within a month, Lisa would have nothing left. John leaned back, exhaling slowly. Lisa thought she had upgraded. She had no idea the man she ran to was about to lose everything. Lisa sat on the balcony of her Miami penthouse, sipping champagne. Life was perfect. Derek had promised her a future filled with luxury. And best of all, John was out of the picture. Or so she thought. Her phone buzzed. A text from Derek. Derek, babe, we have a problem. She frowned. A problem? Then another text. This one from the bank. Your credit card transaction has been declined. Her stomach twisted. She clicked on her banking app. And her blood ran cold. Derek's accounts, frozen. Lisa's credit cards, blocked. Panic surged through her. She rushed inside where Derek was pacing, phone pressed to his ear. What the hell is going on? Lisa demanded. Derek ran a hand through his hair. I don't know. My accounts are flagged. The IRS just hit me with a damn audit. Lisa's world started to spin. This wasn't normal. This wasn't a coincidence. And then, for the first time, a terrible thought crept into her mind. Had John done this? Had he somehow found them? Lisa paced the penthouse, her heart hammering. This wasn't supposed to happen. Derek was supposed to be her ticket to an easy, wealthy life. But now, his accounts were locked. His credit was tanking. And an IRS audit was breathing down their necks. This wasn't a coincidence. Lisa's hands clenched around her phone. John, could he have done this? No, that was ridiculous. He wasn't the vengeful type. Was he? She had left him behind. He should have moved on. But as she stood there watching Derek curse at his phone, a new thought chilled her. John had resources. He had connections in finance. And most importantly, he had every reason to destroy her. She picked up her phone, her fingers hovering over John's contact. Should she call? No, that would give him power. Instead, she opened a private browser tab and searched for, can an ex-husband legally ruin your credit? The answer made her stomach twist. Yes, and it was happening right now. John sat in his Austin office, watching the chaos unfold from afar. His plan was working flawlessly. Lisa and Derek's accounts? Frozen. Derek's real estate business? Under federal scrutiny. Lisa's cushy life? Slipping through her fingers. He took a sip of his coffee, feeling something he hadn't felt in months, satisfaction. Then his phone buzzed. A text from Mark, his private investigator. Mark, she's panicking. She just started searching for legal advice. John smirked. Good. Let her feel the pressure. He had no intention of letting her off easy. Not yet. Lisa had humiliated him. She had stolen from him, lied to his face, and thrown away their marriage for a cheap thrill. Now she was going to know what it felt like to lose everything. His next move? He pulled up his lawyer's number. Time to make this official. Lisa's phone rang. A known number. She hesitated, then answered. Hello? A voice she hadn't heard in months made her breath hitch. Enjoying Miami? John's voice was calm. Too calm. Lisa's stomach dropped. He knew. She tried to compose herself. John. You stole from me, he cut in. You thought I'd just let it go? Lisa swallowed hard. I don't know what you're talking about. John chuckled. You don't? That's funny, Lisa. Because the IRS seems very interested in your new boyfriend's money? Her hands trembled. You did this? She whispered. I told you not to try me, John said, his voice like steel. But you never listened, did you? Lisa's mouth went dry. This wasn't the heartbroken man she had left behind. This was someone else. Someone dangerous. And she had no idea what he was planning next. Lisa's hands shook as she ended the call. John knew everything. And worse, he was behind it all. She turned to Derek, who was still furiously pacing. It's John, she blurted out. He's doing this to us? Derek's eyes snapped to her, filled with frustration. Your ex? What the hell does he have to do with anything? Lisa swallowed hard. He works in finance. He has connections. He's ruining us. Derek scoffed. No, the IRS is ruining us. Lisa grabbed his arm. No, you don't get it. John doesn't play fair. He's the type to destroy you from the inside out and make you think you did it to yourself. Derek pulled away, rubbing his temples. Well, that's just great, Lisa. You brought a psycho into my life. Lisa flinched at his words. I didn't think he'd do this. Derek exhaled sharply. We need to fix this. Now. Lisa nodded, but deep down she knew the truth. There was no fixing this. John had started a war. And Lisa had no idea how to fight back. John leaned back in his chair, the conversation with Lisa replaying in his mind. She was scared. But this was just the beginning. He hadn't even touched the deeper levels of his revenge yet. His next move? A legal strike. He dialed his lawyer. I want to file for divorce on my terms. Prenup clause, activated. Financial fraud allegations, in motion. Lisa's assets, now legally in jeopardy. If she thought losing money was bad, wait until she realized she now owed him. John smirked. This was going to be fun. Lisa sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the screen of her laptop. John had filed for divorce. But this wasn't just any divorce. The prenup clause was kicking in, meaning that not only was she cut off but she now had to pay him $100,000 in damages. Her entire body went cold. She had left John for a life of riches. Now she was on the verge of losing everything. Derek walked in, his face dark. We have another problem. Lisa looked up, her throat dry. What now? Derek held up his phone. My investors are pulling out. The audit scared them off. I'm losing deals left and right. Lisa's stomach clenched. John had flipped their world upside down in a matter of days. And for the first time, real fear crept into her chest. What if this was only the beginning? Lisa's hands trembled as she scrolled through her emails. Account overdue. Notice of legal action. Credit limit decreased. Every email was another brick crushing down on her. She had spent months planning her escape from John, carefully withdrawing money, playing innocent, thinking she had outsmarted him. But now, she was the one being suffocated. Derek stormed into the room, his face twisted with frustration. I just got off the phone with my lawyer. We're screwed, Lisa. Lisa's throat tightened. What do you mean? Derek threw his phone onto the bed. Your ex? He just filed some legal fraud allegations against you. The feds are looking into all of it. Every financial move we've made in the past year. Lisa's heart stopped. Fraud allegations. The worst possible thing that could happen to someone who had just stolen $250,000. John wasn't just attacking their money. He was coming for their freedom. Lisa sat in the bathroom, gripping the edges of the sink. Her pulse pounded in her ears. John had trapped her. Completely. She had always thought she could talk her way out of anything, charm her way through any mess. But this? There was no escaping this. Her phone vibrated. A new message. John. You thought you were smarter than me. How does it feel now, Lisa? A sharp breath escaped her lips. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard. She wanted to fight back. To scream at him. To call him a monster. But deep down she knew the truth. John had won. Derek knocked on the door. Lisa, pack your things. We need to leave. She turned, eyes wide. Leave? Where? Derek ran a frustrated hand through his hair. Somewhere. Anywhere. We can't stay here. Lisa shook her head. We have no money, Derek. Where the hell are we supposed to go? Silence. For the first time, Derek looked at her differently. Not as a lover. Not as a partner. But as a liability. And Lisa realized something horrifying. Derek was about to abandon her. Lisa sat on the couch, staring at the wall. Derek was gone. He had packed his things, made a few calls, and vanished. He had told her it was temporary, that he just needed to clear his head. But Lisa knew the truth. She was alone. Her phone buzzed again. Another message. John. Did you really think he'd stay? You were just another transaction, Lisa. You always were. Tears stung her eyes. She had thrown away a good life, a stable life, with John. And for what? For this? She stared at the empty penthouse, at the eviction notice on the table, at the pile of unpaid bills. She had lost everything. And the worst part? John wasn't done with her yet. Lisa sat in the dim motel room, the air thick with stale cigarettes and regret. She had spent the last 3 days in a fog. She had tried everything. Derek was gone. Her friends ignored her. Her credit was ruined. Every bank account frozen. And worst of all, she had nowhere to go. She pulled her knees to her chest, staring blankly at the stained ceiling. Her body shook from exhaustion. Her mind raced with regret. This wasn't supposed to happen. She was Lisa Carter. She was supposed to win. She had been so sure John was just some boring, predictable husband. She had underestimated him. And now, he had erased her. A sharp knock at the door made her flinch. Slowly she stood and opened it. A man in a suit stood there, holding a thick envelope. Lisa Carter? He asked. She swallowed. It's Lisa Mason now. The man didn't blink. Not legally. You're still married. He handed her the envelope. Divorce papers. Fraud charges. Debt collection notices. Lisa's stomach twisted. Her hands trembled as she flipped through the pages. This wasn't just a divorce. John was taking everything. Her past. Her future. Her dignity. Lisa dropped the papers onto the floor, her breath coming in short gasps. A scream built in her throat, but nothing came out. Because for the first time in her life, she had truly lost. Lisa stared at the paperwork in front of her, her vision blurring with tears. John had made sure she had no way out. She tried to call Derek. No answer. She tried to access her remaining credit cards. Declined. She even considered calling John himself, but deep down she knew. He wasn't going to help her. John wasn't the same man she had married. He was someone else now. Someone who had learned how to destroy without ever lifting a finger. Her phone buzzed. A news alert. Lisa's breath caught as she saw Derek's face on the screen. Real estate mogul Derek Mason under federal investigation. Business empire collapses overnight. Her hands went cold. John had completely ruined him. Derek had no money left to save her. Lisa had officially lost everything. Lisa sat on a bench in downtown Miami, clutching the only bag she had left. A month ago, she had a penthouse, luxury clothes, and a future filled with endless money. Now, she was homeless. Her phone was shut off. Her bank accounts were frozen. Her credit was destroyed. And worst of all, John had made sure she had no one to turn to. Her fingers gripped the divorce papers, crumpling the edges. And then the final message came. John, you took everything from me. Now you know what it feels like. Enjoy rock bottom, Lisa. Lisa's eyes filled with tears as she read those words. John had won. And this time, there was no escape. Lisa sat outside a rundown cafe in Miami, staring blankly at the people passing by. She had nothing left. Her luxury lifestyle? Gone. Her money? Stolen back. Her new lover? Abandoned her. And worst of all, John had done it all without even touching her. She clenched her fists, her nails digging into her palms. This wasn't how her life was supposed to go. She had to do something. Anything. Then it hit her. John still had a weakness. She pulled out her old phone, one of the few things she had left, and dialed a number she never thought she'd call again. The line rang. Then a voice. His voice. Lisa. She swallowed hard, forcing a small, broken smile. John. I made a mistake. Silence. Then a chuckle. A low, dark sound that sent chills down her spine. You really think you can play me again? Her stomach twisted. She hadn't expected him to sound so different. She had expected anger. But John sounded calm, cool, in control. And that terrified her more than anything. Lisa took a deep breath. She had to try. John, please, she whispered. I was wrong. I miss you. I miss. Stop. The single word cut through her like a knife. You don't miss me, Lisa, John said. You miss the life you had when you were with me. You missed the security, the money, the power. Lisa's throat tightened. You knew. John sighed. You thought you were smarter than me. But you never realized something important. She hesitated. What? I don't forgive. And I don't forget. Tears stung her eyes. John, please. I have nothing left. Pause. Then his voice dripping with amusement. Good. That means you're exactly where you belong. Click. The line went dead. Lisa stared at the screen, her chest heaving. She had lost. Completely. Loudspeaker, end of chapter 20. Call to action. John made sure Lisa had nothing left. But does she have one last trick up her sleeve? Find out in chapter 21. Lisa stumbled down the sidewalk, John's final words replaying in her head. She had never heard him like that before. The old John, the kind, patient, predictable man she had left behind, was dead. In his place, a man who had learned how to destroy from the shadows. She felt sick. She had spent so much time trying to take advantage of him. And now, he had turned her into nothing. For the first time in her life, Lisa felt true regret. She had thought she was in control. But she had been outplayed from the very start. And now, she was just another forgotten name. A woman who lost everything, because she deserved it. Lisa wandered the streets of Miami, her once flawless appearance reduced to a disheveled mess. Her expensive designer clothes? Worn out and wrinkled. Her perfectly styled hair? Now tangled and dull. Her confidence? Shattered. People no longer turned their heads to admire her. They ignored her. Or worse, they pitied her. She had fallen further than she ever thought possible. Then as she passed a newsstand, something caught her eye. A tabloid magazine. Her heart stopped when she saw the cover. John Carter, From Betrayal to Billionaire. Lisa's breath hitched. She grabbed the magazine with shaking hands, flipping to the article. John had rebuilt his wealth. Bigger, stronger, untouchable. And there, right in the middle of the page, was a photo of him. Standing next to a stunning woman. A younger, more beautiful woman. Lisa's stomach twisted. Who was she? The article answered her question. John was engaged. Lisa's fingers gripped the paper so tightly it tore. She felt like she was going to be sick. She had lost everything. And now, John had replaced her. Lisa sat on a park bench, staring blankly at the ground. She had spent months thinking she could claw her way back. That maybe, just maybe, John would forgive her. That she could convince him to take her back, or at least help her get back on her feet. But now, he had erased her. She no longer mattered. Her phone was gone. Her friends had abandoned her. Her own family wouldn't even return her calls. John had made sure she had nowhere left to go. Lisa buried her face in her hands. This couldn't be happening. She was Lisa Carter. She was supposed to be on top. And now, she was nobody. That night, Lisa curled up on a thin motel bed, staring at the ceiling. Her life was over. Her only hope was to disappear, to start over in some other city. She reached for her bag, pulling out the last piece of evidence of her old life, her wedding ring. She had never sold it. She had told herself it was because she didn't need to. But now, she realized the truth. It was the only thing left of John. Her phone buzzed, an unknown number. Her heart pounded as she hesitantly answered. A familiar voice greeted her. John. Lisa, he said smoothly, I just wanted you to know something. Lisa swallowed hard. What? John chuckled. You never saw it coming, did you? Lisa's lips parted, but no words came out. Click. The line went dead. Lisa slowly set the phone down. And for the first time in her life, she accepted defeat. John had won. Completely. And she was nothing. Lisa sat in the dingy motel room, staring at the cracked ceiling. The silence was deafening. She had spent years manipulating, scheming, and using people. And now there was no one left. John had erased her from his life as if she never existed. Her bank accounts? Empty. Her reputation? Destroyed. Her future? Non-existent. She had tried calling old friends, but they had all abandoned her. She had tried getting a job, but no one would hire her, not with the fraud allegations looming over her name. Now she was just another forgotten face in a cheap motel. The worst part? She deserved it. She had thrown away a good man, a loyal man, and he had made sure she would never recover from that mistake. Lisa stepped out of the motel, wrapping her thin coat around herself. The once glamorous, confident woman was now a nobody. She walked past a luxury store, her stomach twisting as she saw a familiar face on a billboard. John. He looked powerful, successful, unbothered. She couldn't tear her eyes away. Then she noticed the woman standing beside him in the photo. His new fiancée. Lisa's chest tightened as she read the words underneath. Billionaire financier John Carter announces engagement. She gripped the metal railing beside her. He had replaced her. Moved on. While she was rotting in misery, John was thriving. A lump formed in her throat as she realized she had never mattered. Not really. Not to him. Because men like John Carter? They don't lose. Lisa returned to her motel room feeling a new kind of emptiness. For months, she had clung to some hope that John still thought about her. That maybe he regretted ruining her life. But after seeing him, happy, engaged, untouchable, she finally accepted the truth. She had been nothing more than a lesson for him. A mistake he had erased. She sat down on the edge of the bed, staring at the last possession she had from her old life. Her wedding ring. She had kept it. Not because of sentiment, but because it was the last piece of the power she once had. Now, it was just a symbol of her biggest failure. Her phone buzzed. A blocked number. She hesitated before answering. Hello? A familiar voice. John. Lisa? Her throat tightened. John, please? He cut her off. I just wanted to check if you got my message. Lisa's stomach twisted. What message? John chuckled. That your story is over. Click. The line went dead. Lisa sat there, staring at the phone in her shaking hands. For the first time in her life, she truly understood what it meant to lose. Lisa sat motionless, gripping the cheap motel bedspread as John's final words echoed in her mind. Your story is over. A slow chill crawled up her spine. For months she had fought to regain control. Tried to find a way back. Tried to outthink John. But now she understood something horrifying. There was no coming back from this. John hadn't just destroyed her financially. He had erased her. She had become nothing. A shadow. A cautionary tale. Her phone lay in her lap, the call long ended, but she couldn't stop staring at it. For the first time in her life, Lisa felt completely powerless. And she hated it. Hated John. Hated herself. Because deep down, she knew she was the one who had let it happen. Lisa stumbled out of the motel and into the cold night air. She didn't know where she was going. Didn't care. She just needed to move. Needed to escape the crushing weight of failure. She passed by a restaurant with a TV screen in the window. And there he was. John. His name in bold letters. His engagement announcement plastered on the screen. He was celebrating. He was free. Lisa pressed her forehead against the glass, fighting back tears. She had thrown him away like he was disposable. And now, she was the one left in the gutter. A nobody. A ghost of her own making. She turned away, biting her lips so hard she tasted blood. John had made sure she had nowhere to go. No money. No connections. Not even Derek had stuck around. But if she had to start from zero, she would. Even if it meant crawling her way back. Somehow. Some way. Even if she had to become a different person entirely. Meanwhile, miles away in Austin, Texas, John sat in his penthouse, his phone still in his hand, staring out at the city skyline. Lisa's voice had trembled on the call. She had finally broken. He had waited months for this moment. Plotted every move. And now, she was nothing. Not an enemy. Not a threat. Just another forgotten mistake. His fiancée walked into the room, wrapping her arms around him. Everything okay? John exhaled slowly, then smiled. Yeah, he said. Everything's perfect. He slid his phone onto the table. And for the first time in a long time, Lisa Carter didn't exist anymore. Lisa sat in the corner booth of a cheap diner, stirring a cup of coffee she couldn't afford. Her hands shook, not from the cold but from pure desperation. She had spent weeks scraping by, staying in motels when she could, sleeping in bus stations when she couldn't. She had nothing left. But Lisa Carter wasn't the type to fade away quietly. John thought he had won. He thought he had buried her, erased her. But Lisa had one thing left. Her mind. She wasn't stupid. She knew how to play the long game. And if she had to reinvent herself, change her name, and crawl out of the gutter just to strike back, she would. She grabbed a napkin and a pen from the table, scribbling down her new plan. She had spent years studying John. Now she was going to become the person he never saw coming. Lisa wasn't finished yet. And when she came back, she was going to take everything. Lisa needed money. Fast. She had no credit, no bank account, no identity that wasn't stained with fraud. So she did what she had to. She hustled. She took under-the-table jobs, bartending, cleaning, even working as a waitress in the same city where she had once lived like royalty. It was humiliating. People who used to admire her now walked past without a second glance. But she swallowed her pride. Because pride wouldn't put a roof over her head. She wasn't playing for small wins. She was playing for a comeback. And one day when she was ready, John would pay for what he did to her. Months passed. Lisa wasn't the same woman anymore. The expensive clothes? Gone. The high-maintenance attitude? Buried. The careless arrogance? Replaced by something sharper. She had changed her name. Her look. Her entire identity. The old Lisa Carter was dead. She had lost everything. But she had learned something too. John had built himself back up after she destroyed him. Now she was doing the same. And when she was strong enough, she would come for him. Not with anger. Not with tears. But with a smile. Because the best revenge was making him regret ever thinking she was finished. Lisa Carter was dead. At least, that's what she told herself as she stared into the mirror of a dingy motel bathroom. Gone was the high-maintenance, designer-wearing woman who once lived off men's money. In her place stood a survivor. Her once golden hair was now a deep, raven black. Her identity? Changed. She had burned every bridge, disappeared from every record that could trace her back to her old life. And for the first time in months, Lisa wasn't running. She was planning. John had built himself into a powerhouse. Fine. Now it was her turn. But this time she wouldn't be reckless. This time she would take her time. She had learned from the best after all. And when the moment was right, John Carter wouldn't even see her coming. Lisa needed to play smart. No more shortcuts. No more reckless greed. She started at the bottom just like John had. Bartending. Waitressing. Anything that put cash in her hands. She studied business. Finance. Power moves. She learned how men like John thought, how they built empires. And slowly, piece by piece, she began building a new version of herself. A version that no one could ignore. A version that could destroy John Carter. The only difference? This time she wouldn't just be a trophy wife. She would be something much, much more dangerous. A year had passed. Lisa stood outside a high-end corporate event in New York City, dressed in power instead of desperation. She had climbed her way up. She wasn't begging for scraps anymore. She was a player. And tonight? Tonight, John Carter was in the same room as her. He didn't know it yet. Didn't know that the woman he had destroyed had risen from the ashes. Lisa smirked, stepping inside the ballroom, champagne in hand. This wasn't about petty revenge. This was about control. And before this was over, John Carter was going to learn exactly what it felt like to lose. Just like she had. Lisa stood in the grand ballroom, surrounded by New York's wealthiest and most powerful. A year ago she had been homeless, forgotten, and erased. Now she was reborn. She had spent every second of the past year learning, building, and positioning herself. And tonight she would see if it had all been worth it. Then across the room she saw him. John Carter. He looked even more powerful than before. Confident. Untouchable. At his side, his new fiancée, the perfect symbol of his success. Lisa's nails dug into her palm, but she forced a smile. This wasn't the time for anger. No, this was strategy. John thought she was gone. He was wrong. She picked up a champagne flute, took a slow sip, and then she made her move, walking straight toward him. John turned, mid-conversation, his laughter fading as his eyes locked onto her. For a split second, something flashed in his expression. Shock. Recognition? Then, nothing. Cold indifference. Lisa smirked. Good. Let him think she was harmless. Lisa, he said smoothly, as if her presence was nothing more than an inconvenience. I almost didn't recognize you. Lisa let out a soft laugh. I'd say the same, but I've been keeping up with your headlines. She glanced at his fiancée. Congratulations, by the way. The woman smiled, unaware of the storm brewing between them. Thank you. And you are? Lisa tilted her head, eyes never leaving John. An old friend. John's expression remained unreadable, but Lisa knew him too well. She had rattled him. She excused herself before he could respond. disappearing into the crowd. John wasn't stupid. He knew this wasn't a coincidence. He knew she was back. And that was exactly what she wanted. Lisa watched from a distance as John's demeanor changed. He was composed, always controlled, but she had seen it. The tension in his jaw, the slight narrowing of his eyes. He wasn't expecting her. Good. She wasn't here to beg or plead. She was here to play. And before this was over, she would make sure that John Carter, the man who had destroyed her, learned what it felt like to lose. For the first time in a long time, Lisa felt something close to satisfaction. The game had begun, and she wasn't playing to lose. Lisa sat at the bar, swirling the golden liquid in her glass as she watched John from a distance. She had rattled him. Not in a way that anyone else could see, but she knew him. She had studied him for years, lived beside him, broken him. And now, she was going to destroy him from the inside out. She had learned something valuable over the past year. Revenge isn't about rage. It's about patience. She wasn't going to burn his empire overnight. She was going to walk through the front door and dismantle it brick by brick. Lisa smiled, pulling out her phone. She had one move that would set everything in motion. A simple message. She typed it carefully, then hit send. Lisa, let's have dinner. No games. Just old times. She placed her phone down and exhaled slowly. If she knew John, he wouldn't be able to resist. Because despite everything, there was still unfinished business between them. John Carter sat in the back seat of his black Mercedes, staring at the message on his phone. Lisa. His ghost from the past. His biggest mistake. And now, she wanted dinner. He clenched his jaw, debating whether to ignore her or take the bait. A year ago he had made sure she lost everything. He had erased her. So why was she back? Why now? A part of him was curious. The other part? Didn't trust her for a second. He tapped his fingers against the leather seat, deep in thought. Then, against his better judgment, he typed back. John, tomorrow. 8 p.m. My restaurant. Don't be late. If Lisa thought she could slither back into his world, she was dead wrong. Because this time, he was the one in control. Lisa arrived at the restaurant 10 minutes early. Not because she was eager, but because she wanted John to know she wasn't afraid. The hostess led her to a private table in the back. Dim lighting. Expensive wine. No distractions. John was already there. Waiting. Watching. Calculating. Lisa slid into the seat across from him, meeting his cold stare. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then John leaned back, studying her. You're either incredibly brave or incredibly stupid. Lisa smirked. Why not both? His jaw tightened. What do you want, Lisa? She took a slow sip of her wine before answering. I want back in. John didn't react. But she saw it, the flicker of something dangerous in his eyes. Lisa leaned forward, her voice dropping to a whisper. You built your empire without me. Now imagine what you could do with me. Silence. Then John chuckled. Oh, amused. Dangerous.